Thank you and good evening. I founded Marks Barfield, as we've just heard, with my partner David Marks more than 35 years ago, and our project portfolio is unusually diverse across many sectors: culture, education, infrastructure, leisure, workplace, public realm, and the sacred. And it also includes self-generated projects like the London Eye and the Brighton Eye 360, where we made a leap to become entrepreneurs as well as architects. We've been told that our work is difficult to categorize, which we relish. We don't have a house style, and because we have kept the practice relatively small, we don't have a huge portfolio of completed projects. It's quality over quantity, and every project gets huge attention and is unique, coming as it does from a thorough understanding of the client's needs and aspirations, the site, its context, its history, and broader social and environmental imperatives. All our projects are site-specific and deeply rooted in their place. So it would be strange to us if each project was not very different. We operate from our studio in Clapham South in London, and we've won quite a few awards. We've had a 50-50 gender balance from the beginning. We've got a commitment to a technical edge. We like working with engineers, and we have a strong social ethic. This is something that we wrote together in the early days about the belief that design is a powerful tool for good, both social and environmental, and at its best it improves the quality of people's lives and lifts their spirits while drawing on a minimum of the Earth's limited resources. So that's really been a kind of guiding light for the practice since the beginning. We've always integrated sustainability into our projects from the very start, but now, with the climate crisis, we realise that conventional sustainability is no longer enough. Our ethos is one where we like to work in true collaboration with engineers, right from the beginning, and such that the design emerges from the way the building works, not just from the way it looks. Now, I woke up to the urgency of the climate crisis and the severity and urgency of the climate crisis when I read about the IPCC report in October 2018. And I think when the world's top scientists warned that we had 12 years to limit climate and environmental catastrophe, I think we just have to listen. And something else happened to me in 2018. I had my first grandchild, and certainly it focuses the mind. And now I see the world through the lens of the climate crisis and think about what it's going to be like for her in 2050, when she'll be 32. And I'm sure everyone in this room is well informed about the climate crisis. But I don't know, did you see even just last week, we were predicted to reach 2 degrees by 2050, and by the government's climate change committee. And also, did you see that that we've reached the first tipping point? The first global tipping point that's affecting all the ocean coral. And according to the Stockholm Resilience Centre, we've already exceeded 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, and the trajectory is not encouraging. I mean, it needs us to say, I think it's the most important issue of our time. I know there are polycrises, but we owe it to our children not to be bystanders. And according to the Climate Action Tracker, we're heading for 3 degrees by 2100. And if you're in any doubt of what 2 or 3 degrees means, this is what happens to the species extinction in terms of vertebrates, plants and insects. But I'm not here to be a doom monger. I believe there is hope because there are solutions. And I always love this cartoon because it shows that if we respond appropriately, it can actually make the quality of our lives better, not worse. Now, I'm just focusing on the architecture of place. I'd just like to start by referring to the Nolli plan of Rome from 1748. And it was revolutionary at the time because it was the first time anyone had looked at a city through the lens of private and public space, where private and civic buildings are dark and the public buildings are white, or public spaces are white. And I'd also refer to the wonderful Japanese concept of ma, which is defined as the spaces in between, not as vacant voids, but as opportunities to evolve a sense of balance, tranquility, and beauty. And this is one of the places. So the point is that placemaking is not just about the buildings, it's about the spaces between the buildings, what we now call the public realm. And the fact that we can create those spaces with the buildings, I mean, this is one of the best examples I know of where spaces are created with the buildings. And we've got to think of London squares, think of courtyards, think of, all of that. Now, this is one of our first urban realm projects near our office in Clapham Old Town. And we were brought on board by a local authority because it got itself into a bit of a pickle. They were trying to upgrade the triangle that you see there and turn it into a public space. And it's not a simple space because you'd still have to accommodate the buses with bus stands and bus stops. And the previous designers had taken all the buses out and then created a wall of buses between the space and the common, and this did not go down very well. All of a sudden there were these action groups that were starting, no bus wall, save our Clapham Old Town. And we stepped in, and through a good deal of public consultation, we redesigned it to get rid of a gyratory, strategically redistribute the buses just around, while keeping some still in the middle. And we managed to reverse the area from 65% road and 35% pavement to 65% pavement and public space to 35% road, as well as planting more than 80 trees. So we managed to transform the area completely, giving it back to pedestrians. And this is the result of the space that's been created, with this planter at the back that hides the buses. And those are the amelanchias out in the springtime. Now, in Greenwich, we were asked to design a marketing suite, office, restaurant and cafe and a sky bar on the south side of Peninsula Square by the Dome. And this is the site before we started. And despite being a small area within our brief, our aim was to define the southern edge of the Peninsula Square and for it to act as a gateway to the south, to the cable car and to the Central Park. So we created a pair of curved glass pavilions linked by a clear span canopy, and that was inspired by the geomagnetic lodestones which were used in early compasses and enabled the great world voyages of discovery that the maritime heritage of Greenwich owes its name. And the canopy soffit traces the magnetic field patterns linking the pavilions, creating a space for markets and events. This is the Mar space, if you like. And this is what it is like on the inside. There was actually a gallery there for many years. Sadly, it's now closed down. And this is a school that we did for University of Cambridge, which I'm not going to talk about in any detail because I don't have time within the 45 minutes. But it was definitely designed from the inside out. But in doing so, we did create this central space, the Mar space, if you like, in the middle of the school, that's used for all kinds of events. Now, another project that we've done, it's also deeply rooted in its place, is the London Eye project. And it was an entrepreneurial project, as has been mentioned, that came out of a competition in 1993, organised by the Sunday Times and the Architecture Foundation, calling for a landmark to celebrate the millennium. And we came up with the idea of a 500-foot wheel on the South Bank to allow visitors to see London from a new perspective. We didn't win the competition. In fact, nobody won the competition, but we thought it was a good idea, so we started the Millennium Wheel Company and put in a planning application. The planning application came to the attention of a journalist on the Evening Standard, Mirabar Hillel, and she took it to her editor, who was Stuart Stephen at the time, who loved the idea and ran a Back the Wheel campaign. And I think he asked the great and the good what they'd thought of it, and if they liked it, he would print what they said, and if they didn't like it, he didn't. And it also came to the attention of Bob Ayling, who was CEO of British Airways at the time, and because he was looking for a Millennium project. and he joined us. He took 50% of the company and loaned the company £700,000. And with that, we eventually, 2 years later, gained planning permission. But back to why this is rooted in place. If you draw a circle around London and you look for its centre, it is virtually there on the South Bank. And because the project is about seeing London from a new perspective, where better to do it from than its very centre? And the other really important thing at the time was that the South Bank was looking for regeneration. I mean, we found this statistic that apparently 1.5 million people walked halfway across Westminster Bridge, took a picture of the Houses of Parliament, and then walked back north. And so, of course, what we wanted them to do is come south, which they do in their droves now. So that was another very important factor in placing the wheel there on the South Bank. And of course, it was the site of the Festival of Britain in 1951, so it already had a celebratory heritage, if you like. Now, I don't have time really to tell you the full story of the London Eye, so just to say that this was the eventual design of the capsules, and I think one of the things that makes the London Eye unique is the fact that the capsules are on the outside, and that was very deliberate. It made it much more complicated because we had to have drive mechanisms to keep them horizontal. But the reason why they're on the outside is so that when you're at the top, you can see you have 360-degree views, almost like being on top of a mountain in the middle of a city. That was what we were after. But the most difficult thing was getting the funding, and it took almost 2 years, such that we had to actually build the wheel in the end in 15 months. And of course we had the immovable deadline of the millennium. But I don't know if you may remember that we built it horizontally in the river. This is it lifted to 30 degrees. We were told it was the biggest lift of a single object at that time that had ever been done. And this is Boadicea welcoming the London Eye onto the skyline. And this is it vertical, without all the capsules. And of course we did make the deadline, even though there weren't people in it. And the Evening Standard was appropriately enthusiastic. And we actually went out to dinner with Stuart Stephen, and he told us that he actually didn't think we had a hope in hell of getting it, but he was quite happy to be proved wrong. And one of the things about the project that I'm most proud of is that because we were originally had 5-year planning permission, and we got it extended to 20 years, and David and I suggested that as part of the Section 106, 1% of the ticket revenues from the London Eye should go to the local community. And that has happened over the last 20 years, and it's amounted to more than £14 million. And that's really to go to community groups, but also to help with the maintenance of Jubilee Gardens and maintenance of the area. So yes, I'm very pleased about that. I'm going now to talk about a fairly recent project. It's a mixed-use project near Euston, and top right you can see that what the building was like before. And it combines office, residential and retail at ground level. And you can see in the diagram in the bottom right that the residential is kind of slotted in to the side. And we create these stepped landscape terraces at the rear, which continued through and outside and created double height spaces which were articulated on the facade. And we didn't completely demolish it. We retained 33% of the structure. And it's located just north of the West End. And when we first visited the site, we noticed that because of the bend in Hampstead Road, because that's Hampstead Road that comes up from Warren Street Tube Station, and it just bends at that point, we noticed that the site is actually very visible from quite a long distance away. And so we saw that as an opportunity to create a feature that has actually become the kind of building's identity. And it was also an opportunity to create special spaces within the building, creating long views that look down out at Tottenham Court Road. On this project, we made health and well-being a major focus of the design, after we appreciated that a typical office building, 90% of the costs are actually for staff. So happy people it's a really important thing. So we really focused on trying to make sure that people were encouraged, for instance, to use the stairs, not necessarily go on the lift, that there was plenty of biophilia and natural materials. So you can see on the left, this is the atrium on the left, and we have trees growing in there, and so this is the atrium. It's actually a multi-tenanted building, so there's a number of different companies, but we created this kind of commons area at the bottom of the atrium, which was actually where the car park had been. And that's where all of the people from the different companies can actually meet and interact, and they do, apparently, and they appreciate it very much. We also created little kind of moments of delight. So in the spandrel panels around the atrium, we put these mirrors that actually just keep reflecting the greenery and kind of moments of movement in the building. And we've even got a rill, so if you go, you can hear the kind of sound of running water. So I think the connection to nature is just so important. And then just quickly, this is a building that's not too far from you, and we have in our audience the director, the ex-director of the Lightbox, Marilyn Scott. So it was built on a slither of land. It's very much deeply rooted in place. It was built on a slither of land between the Basingstoke Canal and a 5-lane highway that separates the site from the town centre. And the roadside cladding is solid and metallic to protect it from the noise and pollution, etc. And then it opens up and orients itself to the canal side. And also the building is positioned to the farthest east point to create this garden, which benefits from afternoon and evening sun. It was conceived as a cultural treasure box and has got the gold and silver overlapping panels on the roadside are solid except for the keyhole window in the middle. So this is the garden. So it's all the rest of the building is orientated to where it's orientated the canal. It's all in timber, and it's all completely naturally ventilated, apart from the galleries, which obviously have to be very carefully controlled in their environmental aspects. And this is the canal side on the right and the road side on the right. It's quite a schizophrenic in a way. And this is our treetop walkway was conceived to give visitors to Kew an experience of the forest canopy. The tree guy in Kew had spent a long time in the Brazilian rainforest, and he wanted people to have that experience in Kew. And a very early decision was to build it out of Corten steel, because Corten is long life, low maintenance, and has this beautiful patina of rust that protects it from the weather. And it's obviously a material loved by sculptors. The walkway consists of a series of circular nodes at 15-metre centres and 12-metre walkway sections, but with 12-metre walkway sections between them. You can see it's not far from the Temperate House in Kew, or not far from the Palm House. And because Corten only comes in flat sheets, the pylons are triangular in section, and we could make them taper to the top, and then they trifurcate to support the circular nodes. We decided to put the structure into the handrail to minimize the visual appearance in the natural setting. And this is one of the 12-metre walkway sections laid flat. So if you imagine that it's actually kind of a U shape in actual fact. And you can see that it's got these sections which are, the structure is inspired by the Fibonacci sequence. And this makes sense structurally, that the ends are more dense than the middle. So this is a kind of... And many people imagine that tree roots go down far into the ground, but in fact they spread out horizontally, and they're really not very deep. So we had to be very careful not to kill the trees that we were hoping to admire. And we had to have a root survey done so that we understood exactly where all the roots were. And the pile caps were in steel to make them as thin as possible so that they could be hidden under the ground. And each pile cap was completely bespoke. And in fact, when we got the survey, we actually had to change the route of the walkway so that we avoided some of the main routes. So this is the walkway there, and you can see how the core 10 really does. It stands out and fits in at the same time. And this is the walkway on the top. It's 18 meters high. It's quite high, but it's you do feel safe because we made the handrail quite a bit higher than you would normally make it. Now, just wanted to show some more recent projects because what we've become aware in the last few years is that the construction industry is really the elephant in the climate room. So, 42% of emissions coming from the construction industry, 62% of waste. That's really something that shocks me every time I see it, and 50% of extracted materials. So, as an industry, we really have a responsibility to respond to this. And as a practice, we are really trying to become a more regenerative practice, not just sustainable, but regenerative. So it's not just about doing less harm or doing good. It's actually wanting to be doing more good and become regenerative. And we've become very active. I'm on the Architects Declare steering group, and I have been since 2019. And we're trying to influence policy. That's us in the House of Commons last week with Kate Roworth and Kevin MacLeod and Caroline Lucas. We did a building blocks manifesto of trying to suggest ways that the government could respond in legislation. So one of the things that we've done is we've completely redone our material library to focus on low carbon materials and biomaterials. And this is a project that it illustrates that. So it was a mosque that we won in competition in 2009 and took 10 years to build, mainly because of funding. Again, funding is always the difficult bit. And of course we hadn't, and this just shows the need. I like that slide. Yes, it just shows that they were bursting out of the that mosque that they had. And this is the site. It was a site in Mill Road in Cambridge. It's a very residential area. It had been a warehouse. There was for John Lewis. And of course, we hadn't done a mosque before, so we needed to do a lot of research. And what we found was that for centuries and throughout the world, mosques have adapted to their local and cultural and climatic conditions and used their local vernacular. And so we asked ourselves, what should a British mosque be in the 21st century and in Cambridge? And we kind of researched Islamic sacred architecture, and of course we looked at English sacred architecture. And we didn't have to look very far, because the English fan vaulting of King's College Chapel was a great inspiration, as well as looking at what the vernacular was of Cambridge, with its galt bricks with red highlights. So the idea of the Garden of Paradise was also an inspiration. The idea of a calm oasis of contemplation, and a grove of trees with the water fountains symbolizing the source of all life. And this is the final plan, and so Mill Road is on the left, and what it enables people to do is take a journey from Mill Road through the community garden, through an Islamic garden, through a portico, and really move from the kind of day-to-day world to a more reflective and spiritual one. And then they move through to the lobby, and either side of there are the ablution areas, the men and the women, and then to the main prayer hall, which is orientated to the Qibla wall, which is orientated to Mecca, which is why it changes in angle. Seems to have got slower in its changing. And this really just shows how it responds to its place. So it steps down to the road, it's orientated to the road in the front, and then as it goes further into the site, it then rises up, and that's when it's got a dome. So again, we like to think that it kind of sits in and stands out at the same time. It fits in and stands out at the same time. And this is the trees which were manufactured in Switzerland. So this is the garden. This is the atrium, the lobby and the atrium as you come in. And this is the ablution areas. On the left is the women's ablution area, on the right is the men's. And one of the things that I'm also quite proud of is that it's the most women-friendly mosque in the country, because the women are in the same space as the men. There's a mashrabiyah screen, but they're in the same space. They're not separated, or they can be separated if they want to. There's actually a first floor area that if the women really want to be separated, they can be. So there you can see the mashrabiyah screen. And actually we found out recently that there was an event where there was, because originally the mashrabiyah screen was going to be fixed and 1.8 metre high, and then through discussions, we managed to persuade them that A, it shouldn't be fixed, and B, it shouldn't be too high. And in fact, you know, the women got involved in the discussions about that. So actually we were able to leave a gap, because they said, you know, we want to be able to see the imam, and you know, and if they have the lectures, we want to be able to participate. But they had an event recently where there was more women than men, and so they were able to move it forward, which I was very glad to hear. And what's very nice is that they have lots and lots of weddings there now. They have more than 100 weddings a year, and apparently a third of the income of the mosque is actually taken up with weddings. And we heard from the director of the mosque that actually it's all to do with the architecture. So that's very heartening as well. And it's very green, of course. It's termed the UK's first green mosque. I don't really like the word green, but anyway. So it relies it's entirely naturally ventilated, and it has. We've made sure it has natural light in all of the main areas, such that you don't actually have to turn the lights on unless it's really dark outside. The rainwater is used to flush the toilets and to water the garden, and it has no fossil fuels on site. And we made that decision back in 2009, so that was good. It's all air source heat pumps and the like. So now I'm going to move just to talk about the circular design that we need to move to. We need to move from the linear take, make, waste economy that we've kind of got mainly in the world to a more circular economy, where you make, you use, you repair, you recover, you reuse, you recycle, or ideally upcycle. This is what we need to move to in all of our economy, not just in the built environment. And in fact, the government now has a task force, the Circular Economy Task Force, which is looking into this, which is good. And this is an example of, I regard as one of the best examples of circular design. So because of the wheel, we knew Coin Street Community Builders, and that was their office on the South Bank, but it needed to be moved so that the Ballet Rambert could be built on that site. And we also knew, because where we live in Stockwell, there's a children's charity. They needed a building, and so basically the Coin Street gave the building to Oasis if they could take it apart within 2 or 3 weeks. And so that's what we did. we took it apart, and I have to give credit to Ben Barfield Marks, who happens to be my son, and a friend of his, who in their 4th year of architecture school organised the whole thing so that it was all taken apart. Then they redesigned it so that it would fit the brief of the new site and fit the new site, and then rebuilt it on the Oasis site, which is just next to where I live in Stockwell. So it's a really good example of where we need to be moving to in terms of circular design. Deconstruction. We need to design things so they can be deconstructed. I mean, the reason why it worked so well was that the original office had been a kind of Walter Siegel inspired office that was, based on self-build principles, and so that's why we were able to just kind of to deconstruct it quite easily. And we need to persuade clients of this, and this is how we're trying to do it with some of our clients. Transition from, they see the value, particularly in offices, as the space that's created, but we're trying to persuade them that the materials are also valuable. They need to change and see the material assets as valuable as well, the bricks and mortar, the labour, the processes, the material extraction. And this is a kind of example of how we are looking at it. So there's a project that we've finished in 22 Baker Street on the right-hand side. This is the office as it was before, and we decided to make it a kind of case study in the circular economy and material reuse. So we did a complete audit of all the materials that were there, and we were only doing Cat A, which is a shame really, but we did a complete audit of the materials that were there and their condition, and created an inventory, and then created a decision matrix as to what was worth keeping, what was not worth keeping, and we managed to persuade, and actually the demolition contractor and the main contractor were really up for this. They really wanted to do it. And so in the end, we reused all of the raised floor tiles on site. We couldn't reuse their supports because they'd been glued in place, and so that's a kind of lesson to learn about what not to do in the future. But the contractor agreed to just move them around so that they could be kept on site and kept the kind of carbon calculation low. And we reused all the fire doors. And in the end, and this is a figure from the contractor, we actually managed to save the client £1.65 million. So this is a fairly... I think we managed to persuade him that this is a good thing, that he actually gains from it. And of course, it also saves carbon, 577,000 CO2s of carbon. And these are all of the things that we managed to save. So it worked out as a good case study. And then, so we obviously weren't able to use all the materials. And so one of the things that we're also trying to do is do a kind of host building. And this is actually not far from the building I just showed you. It's actually for Oasis as well, because they own 3 sites. They have the main adventure playground site. They have and they have this nature garden site. And so we've designed a building that we're hoping to be built out of entirely 100% reused materials. And we've got quite a lot of them stored away. Sadly, we haven't got the finance for it yet. The funding, as I say, the funding is always the most difficult thing. But we've actually managed to accumulate quite a lot of the materials that we're going to need to rebuild this. And this is a forest school nursery and a play building for their nature garden site. And again, we used a similar methodology of trying to collect the materials. And of course, it's a bit kind of, I think one of the things we need to do is redesign the RAROBA plan of work, because, if you're designing it, you need to know what materials you've got early on in order to where the reused materials are. So it's a whole different way of working. And this is another kind of local project to me. I'm on the Clapham Business Improvement District, And we're trying to persuade TfL, because Clapham High Street is a TfL road, and we're trying to persuade them to plant some trees. And this is a master, we didn't actually do this, this is a master plan done by others, but we're just trying to kind of exert influence, because trees, I mean, I'm sure everybody in this room appreciates that, they can reduce temperatures by as much as kind of 5, 6, 7%, 7 degrees in hot weather. And we're going to need more of that, I think, as the climate changes. You know, they reduce the toxicity in air, they encourage biodiversity, they add oxygen, they soak up carbon, they improve health and well-being, they protect us from flooding. I mean, you know, trees are amazing. And this is just another incident, this is another thing. We went to Parliament with our manifesto, but a week ago we actually took over the whole of the London Eye, which I can do because we still have that benefit. And and we call it, we realised that it's quite a good symbol of the circular economy. So we called it the Circular Revolution, and we had about 450 people came from across the industry. That was what was so good. You know, it was developers, it was contractors, it was demolition contractors, consultants, and we had politicians there. We had actually 4 members of the government's circular economy task force, and the deputy chair gave a brilliant speech. So we're trying to do that, but I'm just going to finish with this, the last project. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but yeah. So this is a project, a kind of project that is sort of entrepreneurial again, which is a renewable energy project, and it is at the West Somerset Lagoon. It's basically a lagoon within the Bristol Channel. So the Severn Estuary and the Bristol Channel have the second highest tidal range in the world, and it's completely untapped at the moment. You know, this is a kind of gift of geography, and we're not using it. And I'm working with, and I didn't initiate this project. It was initiated by 3 brilliant engineers and a local person from Minehead in Somerset. And we were asked to join about 3 years ago, and we've been trying to help make this project happen. And the idea is that it's very strategically located outside areas of special environmental interest. Because, I'm involved because I was actually involved in trying to make the barrage happen in about 2009, 2010, when it was the coalition government. So that's why I was invited to be involved. But the problem with the barrage is that it's in these areas of special environmental interest, and it also is a barrier to navigation for the Bristol ports and Cardiff ports, and they really, really weren't keen on that. So this has been strategically placed outside the areas of both the navigation channels and the areas of special environmental interest. And it's basically a semicircular shape that creates the maximum amount of lagoon for the minimum wall perimeter. And also there is a connection, it's actually not shown on here, but there is a connection to the grid at Shirton, which is about there. So basically this is the wall that's created, and within the wall are turbines. And the way that this works is that it could actually produce enough energy for 2 million homes, and it's energy that's secure. We reckon that if we can get these caissons built in various ports all around the Severn Estuary, that it could actually be built in 5 or 6 years, because it's all off-site construction. It's cost effective. I know it's a lot of money. It's almost 11 billion pounds, but it's actually cheaper than nuclear, and it's cost effective in terms of offshore wind as well. And wind and solar lasts about 30 years. Nuclear lasts about 60 years. This could last 120 years. And it's completely reliable and completely predictable. And you can harness the energy both on the ebb and the flood tides. So this is the emerging master plan that we've created. It's located on one end in Minehead and the other just away from Watchet. And so all of these things may not happen, but we've created a master plan to show how, Minehead at the moment is an area of deprivation. There are a lot of young people that are leaving Minehead because there's no jobs. Butlins is there, but that's seasonal jobs, and the economics doesn't go back into Minehead. So it could have a really significant regenerative effect in the area, as well as creating the energy. We reckon that during construction it will create about 8,000 new jobs, and then when it's built, it could create as much as 300 jobs in the area just to maintain it. And so we're suggesting that there could be a visitor observation tower, a visitor centre, a marina, and a water sports centre, because of course with the tide you can't really have that much water sports at the moment because it's just too dangerous. So this is some images of what we've proposing. So that's Minehead there in the distance. I think that's it. Yes, I think that must be the last one. Thank you very much.